Welcome to the channel. I'm Stacy, and my goal here is to help you to play better and sound better in your worship services. Today we're going to go over the parts for the song Mighty Name of Jesus by the Belonging Company. This one uses a combination of major and minor scales, which gives the song its intensity. We'll be playing in a few different chord shapes. We'll be here with a D shape at the 3rd and 4th fret, and then the relative minor for E flat is C minor, and so that's found right here. Same kind of position. And then we have an E flat up here in an A shape at the 6th and 8th frets, and then a B flat in that same area, and we're going to be pulling notes from that as well. And then a higher A shape chord that's going to be up here from the 8th to the 11th fret, and then another B flat that's also right up here in a D shape. Going right into the chorus, we're going to be starting the song in that first D shape, and we're going to pick that B string at the 4th fret. We're going to pull off. So there's hammer-ons and pull-offs. They have the same mark on tabs, but it's just whatever the second note is will just determine whether you're hammering on or pulling off. So we're going to pick that. We're going to pull off, and then we're going to come down on the G string at the 5th fret, strike that note, the G string at the 3rd, and then the G string at the 5th again. And then we're going to palm mute that 3rd fret on the G string, and then pick the 4th fret on the B and the 3rd. The second pass is going to be similar with the same pick and pull off. We're going to come onto the 5th fret G string and then the 3rd fret G string, and we're going to pick that one twice. And then we're going to strike both the G and the B strings at the 3rd fret, and then the G string at the 5th. And that'll sound like this with the effects. The whole run, first pass and second. And then after that, we're doing that pass one more time, similar to the first time through, picking the B string at the 4th fret, pulling off to the 3rd, picking the G string at the 5th, the G string at the 3rd, and then the G string again at the 5th. And at this point, I kick on the swell tone and then let that note carry out. This brings us into the first verse. And so that first note is what starts off the verse. And then our second thing that we're going to swell in on is a B flat, and it's here at the 3rd fret. We're fretting the 3rd fret on the D, G, and B strings. We're going to swell in on that. And then an E flat with the ring finger on the D string at the 5th fret. And then we're going to fret just the 5th string on that 5th fret. And then kicking off the next part of the verse, we're going to fret the D string at the 6th, the G at the 5th. Back to that B flat, D, G, and B on the 3rd fret. And then this time we're going to do the C minor, and you can either fret the D and G at the 5th, the B at the 4th, and then you can fret the high E at the 3rd if you like, but if you don't want to do that one, if you're not going to strike all those strings, then there's no need. We're just going to rake that and and swell that in, and then one more time on that G string at the 5th fret. So going through it with the swell tone will sound like this. And that brings us to our first chorus. We're going to fret our B at the 8th fret, our high E at the 6th, our B at the 6th, and then our B again at the 8th, and then we're going to come down to the G at the 5th fret. We're going to do that palm mute like we did on the 3rd fret G string on the intro, and then we're going to pick the B string at the 4th and 3rd. We're going to repeat that line, B at the 8th, and come down to the G string at the 3rd. And then we're going to strike the G and the B at the 3rd like we did at the intro. And and then the G at the 5th. We're going to come up and do that line one more time on the high E and B strings. This time, similar to on the intro, we're not going to do the palm muted note on the G string 3rd fret. We're just going to go to the B string at the 4th and then the B at the 3rd. And then we resolve it by coming up to the 9th fret on the B string, the 9th, the 8th, and the 6th, and then the 8th on the G, the 6th at the B, and then we're going to come down and strike both the B and G strings on the 3rd fret, and then the G at the 5th and the B at the 4th. With all the effects, it'll sound like this. And coming out of that, we're going into verse 2, which is going to start off the same as the intro, with the pick and pull off on the B string 4th fret to the 3rd, fretting the G string at the 5th, the G string at the 3rd, and then when we come back down on the G string at the 5th, we're going to start palm mutes. And these are just going to be quick little 16 count per position notes until we get up to conclude it, and I'll walk you through that. So it's 16 counts on the 5th fret on the G, 16 on the B string at the 3rd fret, 16 on the G string at the 3rd fret, and then 9 on the G string at the 5th. And then that's going to take us into a little bit of a turnaround part, wrapping up that verse. And so it's like this without the effects. And then it goes into this cool little sequence of kind of arpeggios. And so we're going to fret our G string at the 8th fret. We're going to fret our high E at the 6th, and then our high E at the 8th. We're going to pull off. And then we're going to fret the B at the 8th and the B at the 6th. And then we're going to be able to kind of hold position here a little bit. We're going to be fretting the G string at the 8th, the B at the 6th, and then we're going to be bringing our pinky down on the 8th. And it's going to be kind of this rolling repeat. And then we're going to do a little bit of a walk down. And so we're going to release our pinky from the 8th fret on the B string. And because our index finger is already on the 6th fret, we're good for that one. And then we're going to bring our middle finger down on the 7th fret G string. And then we're going to alternate back and forth between the 7th fret G and the 6th fret B. And then we're going to go G, B, high E. So G at the 7th, B at the 6th, high E at the 6th. And we're going to repeat that. So that little part going into it and through it will be like this. Then for the final section of this part, we're going to pick the 7th fret G string, come down on the 8th fret G string. We're going to strike the B string at the 6th fret, back to the G at the 8th, and then the B at the 8th. Alternate right there, and then do that sequence one more time from the 7th to the 8th fret. And we're going to go through that twice, and then we're going to strike the high E at the 6th fret, and then the B at the 9th fret. And so running through all that with the effects will sound like this. Now we're going into our first big chorus. So we're kicking on our lead tone, and we're going to be on the B and high E strings at the 8th fret and the 6th fret. So B at the 8th fret, high E at the 6th, B at the 6th, and then B at the 8th. Coming down, we're going to strike the G string at the 5th. There's kind of a pause right there, and then we're going to palm mute that 5 times. And then we're going to pick the B string at the 4th, palm mute the G string at the 5th 2 more times. And then we're going to pick the B string at the 4th and then the B at the 3rd. It'll sound like this. We're going to do that little run again up here on the B and E strings, only this time we're going to come down to the G string at the 3rd fret. And we're going to do the same picking pattern, only we're going to be G string at the 3rd and then B string at the 4th. And then when we conclude that, we're B string at the 3rd, G string at the 5th, and that's part of that C minor chord. And then we're going to come back up, and this time we're going to be on the B string at the 8th, the high E at the 6th, the B at the 6th, and then the G at the 8th. And then we're going to do that same pattern with the palm mutes right here. And then we're going to resolve it by coming up to the 9th fret on the B string. Then we're going to come up to the B string on the 9th fret. We're going to pick the B at the 9th, the B at the 8th, the B at the 6th, the G at the 8th, and then the B at the 6th. And then we're going to strike that 4 times and come down to the 3rd fret and strike the G and the B strings, both on the 3rd fret, and then strike the G on the 5th and the B on the 4th. And coming out of that, we're going to be up with the B at the 6th fret, the high E at the 8th, the high E at the 6th, the B at the 6th, the G at the 8th, and then we're going to come down to the G at the 5th. We're going to pick that once, we're going to pick it again, and then we're going to strike the B string on the 8th fret. And then we're going to come down and strike the G at the 5th, the B at the 4th, and then the B and the G at the 3rd. Then we're coming up to the B on the 6th, the high E at the 8th, the high E at the 6th, the B again at the 6th, the G at the 8th, and then the G at the 5th. We're going to pick that once. It's kind of a moment. Then we're going to let that pass, and then pick it again, and then the B at the 8th. And then we're going to strike the G and the B on the 8th, and then the G at the 7th and the B at the 6th. And then we're going to come over and strike on the 8th fret, the G and the B, the high E at the 6th, the B at the 6th, the G at the 8th, the G at the 3rd. We're going to pick that once, just like we did here at the 5th fret. And then we're going to strike that 4th fret on the B string, and then strike both the G and the B on the 3rd fret, and then the G on the 5th, B on the 4th. And then we're going to be back up the 8th fret on the B. So it's the 8th fret on the B, the high E at the 6th, the B at the 6th, the B at the 8th again, and then the G at the 5th. We're going to pick that and hold, and then we're going to pick it again and strike the B at the 4th. And then we're going to have a quick pick on the G string at the 5th, and then we're going to pick the B at the 4th, the B at the 3rd. And then we're going to come up and resolve it with the B string at the 9th fret, and we'll do that little walk. Strike that B string on the 6th fret 4 times, and then come back down to the 3rd fret on the G and B, and then the 5th and 4th on the G and B. So that whole chorus with the effects will sound like this. And that wraps up that chorus section, and then now we're going into the bridge. So we're still on our middle position. That's if you have a 2 pickup guitar, that's the sound you want. If you don't, if you're running with the Strat, the middle pickup is a great tone for this, as well as the middle or neck, the middle and neck, so that 4th position. Either one of those would be good, but if you prefer it a different way, it's what you want. So we're going to be up here. This is going to be the clean tone again that we're going to be using with the delays, the same thing we used for the intro. And we're going to be up here on the 8th fret on that A shape of our E flat. And we're coming right off the B string at the 8th fret. And then we're going to come on the B string on the 9th fret, the B string at the 11th, picking that twice, and then the G string at the 8th. And then that same little line on the B string from the 8th to the 11th, and then the G string at the 10th. We're repeating that. And then that same line back to the G string at the 8th fret. Next time we go through it, when we're going to do that same line. So 8, 9, 11, but this time we're going to strike both the 8th fret and the 11th fret on the G and B strings. So going into that part where we're striking the G string and the B string on the 8th and 11th fret, I'm coming down on that on the 1. So just counting through that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Doing the same thing for that second section, and that's going to be fretting the G at the 10th, the B at the 11th. That wraps up that first section, and then going into the last part of the bridge, we're going to fret the 8th fret on the high E, the B at the 9th, the B at the 11th, and we're going to pick that one twice. This is the one where we're not fretting 2 notes, so that's how that's going to go. And then coming back into it, we're going to be fretting the 8th, 9th, 11th on the B, and then the 10th and 11th on the G and B, and then we're going to just kind of increase our intensity and our frequency on that chord. So that section, I'm just hitting it kind of in an off count as well. And then we got one more pass. And this one I get a little bit more consistent with that pick. And then I slide my hand down just to give something if it does make a noise. If it doesn't, there's a lot going on in the band. Come back up, we're on an F minor, and we're going to just drive that. And again, I like to just slide my hands down. And that wraps up that particular part of the bridge, but let's hear it with the effects. And then coming out of that, I'm going to kick on my bridge pickup, and we're going to come down and we're going to play a C minor, which is D and G strings fretted at the 5th fret, B at the 4th, and then a B flat, which is D, G, and B all fretted at the 3rd. And then we're up to those chorus kind of lead lines. So B at the 8th, high E at the 6th, B at the 6th, G at the 8th, G at the 3rd, pick that twice, and then we're going to have like a quick hit and then pick the B string at the 4th. And then fretting both the G and the B strings on the 3rd, and then the G at the 5th, and the B at the 5th. And then B at the 8th, high E at the 6th, B at the 6th, B at the 8th, and then we're going to come to the 5th fret, and we're going to pick it and let it breathe for just a moment. And then we're going to palm mute it. And then we're going to pick the G at the 8th, and then the G at the 7th. And then we're going to have that walk down from the 9th fret on the B string. So 9, 8, 6 on the B, and then 8 on the G. And then we're going to pick the 6th on the B, and then we're going to fret the 6th on the B and the 7th on the G, and we're going to strike that 4 times. And then the G and B strings on the 3rd fret, and then the G at the 5th and the B at the 4th. And then we're coming up, we're going to fret the B string at the 8th, and it's going to be a little bit of a lead-in note. So for this one, we're at the 8th fret on the B, then the 9th, then the 8th, then the 6th, and then the 8th fret on the G string, and then the 5th fret on the G string, and then the 8th fret on the B. And then we're going to fret the 5th at the G, the 4th at the B, and then the 3rd on the G and B. Let me see. And then coming back up, the 8th fret on the B. And then we're fretting the G at the 3rd, the B at the 4th, but we're picking the G on the 3rd twice. And then letting that ring out, and then we're going to fret the G and B on the 3rd, and then the G at the 5th, and the B at the 4th. And then back up to the B string on the 8th fret, the high E at the 6th, the B at the 6th, and then the G at the 8th. We're picking that a couple of times, letting it breathe. And then we're going to alternate real quick between the 5th fret on the G and the 8th fret on the B. And then the 8th on the G and the 7th on the G. And then we're going to resolve again from the 9th fret, 9, 8, 6 on the B string, the 8th on the G, and then back to the B, and then we're going to hit the 6th fret on the B and the 7th on the G 4 times. And then the G and B at the 3rd, and then the G and B at the 5th and 4th. Let me run through that with the effect. So this is all with the lead, and this is with our bridge pickup on, starting from that C minor to the B flat. So coming out of that, we have one more section on the B string, starting at the 9th fret. We're going to go 9, 8, 6, and then the G string at the 8th, and then the B at the 6th. We're going to hit that twice. We're going to hit it one more time, so a 3rd time. and then the G at the 8th, the B at the 6th, the B at the 6th again, the G at the 8th, the B at the 6th, and then the B at the 8th, and then the 6th. So all of that, just real quick, is like this. I'll play it pretty slow. And then we do that one more time, but we resolve it different. We're going to come down to the G and B strings at the 3rd fret, and then the G at the 5th, the B at the 4th. And then that concludes that part. On the cover that I did, I went right into rakes, and so I kicked on the swell tone. So what I want to do is run through that last passage along with the outro / interlude that I used for that cover video. So what we did is I started here on an A flat, so fretting the D at the 6th fret, the G at the 5th, the B at the 4th, and then we're going to fret that, rake it, and then to a C minor, and I just fretted the D string at the 5th, the G at the 5th, the B at the 4th, to a B flat, D, G, and B all fretted at the 3rd, and then an E flat, so that's going to be the D at the 5th, the G at the 3rd, and the B at the 4th. And then we're bouncing off of that B flat again, so all 3 of those strings fretted at the 3rd, back up to that A flat, and then it repeats. So with the last part of that lead line that we used in the chorus into that interlude / outro, it's going to sound like this. If you'd like the resources for this song, you can find them at a link in the description box below. There's HX Stomp and Helix song-specific presets, as well as that Mighty Dual preset, that's the dual amp setup. I also have the Jet, Eternity, and Revelation MIDI messages available, and the lead guitar tabs. There's a handful of downloads free for you in there as well. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, subscribe and hit that like button for good measure. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you in the next one.